In the shadow of the silver panic of 1893, America's worst economic collapse, millions were left jobless and destitute. With no safety net, they faced ruin. Yet President Cleveland and Washington's elite offered only indifference, refusing any responsibility for the suffering. In defiance, an unassuming businessman and a mystic preacher ignited the nation's first mass protest march on the Capitol. Their demand: use federal funds to rebuild America's roads and put its people back to work. By spring 1894, a mass movement of 200,000 mobilized in 17 camps across the nation. It became known as Coxey's Industrial Army. They ended up marching, rafting, and seizing trains to join the cause. Among them was an 18-year-old Jack London. He was a wayward hobo on the road at the time, but he would go on to become one of the world's most widely read authors, known not only for adventure, but for his unflinching portrayals of labor, poverty, and protest. The greatest story Jack ever wrote might have been the one he lived.
One defines a stiff as a tramp, a hobo, a bindle stiff. Whatever you call him, he's the guy on the bottom, looking up. It was once my strange, hard fortune to travel a few weeks with a push, a gang, an army, that numbered 2,000 such souls. This was known as Kelly's Army. General Kelly organized his gang separate from Jacob Coxey, but they decided to join efforts. The contingent I joined was but one of 17 formed across the country. And so it became that across the wild and woolly West, clear from California, General Kelly and his heroes had captured trains. But they fell down when they crossed the Missouri and went up against the effete East. The East hadn't the slightest intention of giving free transportation to 2,000 hobos. Kelly's army lay helplessly for some time at Council Bluffs. The day I joined it, made desperate by delay, it marched out to capture a train. It was quite an imposing sight. General Kelly sat a magnificent black charger, and with waving banners, to the martial music of fife and drum corps, company by company, in 2 divisions, his 2,000 stiffs countermarched before him and hit the wagon road to the little burg of Weston, 7 miles away. Being the latest recruit, I was in the last company, of the last regiment, of the 2nd Division, and, furthermore, in the last rank of the rear guard.
Conditions, they are bad, and some of you are sad. You cannot see your enemy, the class that lives in luxury. You working men are poor, will be forevermore. As long as you permit the few to guide your destiny, shall we still be slaves and work for wages? It is outrageous, has been for ages. This earth by right belongs to toilers and not to spoilers of liberty.
It wasn't until Kelly's Industrial Army crossed the Missouri that it began to walk, and after that, it never rode again. It cost the railroads slathers of money, but they were acting on principle, and they won. Dexter, Van Meter, Boonville, Commerce, Valley Junction, how the names of the towns come back to me as I con the map and trace our route through the fat Iowa country. And the hospitable Iowa farmer folk. They turned out with their wagons and carried our baggage, gave us hot lunches at noon by the wayside. Mayors of comfortable little towns made speeches of welcome and hastened us on our way. Deputations of little girls and maidens came out to meet us, and the good citizens turned out by hundreds, locked arms, and marched with us down their main streets. It was circus day when we came to town, and every day was circus day, for there were many towns. In the evenings, our camps were invaded by whole populations. Every company had its campfire, and around each fire something was doing. The cooks in my company, Company L, were song and dance artists, and contributed most of our entertainment. In another part of the encampment, the Glee Club would be singing. In addition to the stunts of the companies and the glee club, church services were usually held, local preachers officiating, and always there was a great making of political speeches. All these things ran neck and neck. It was a full-blown midway. It turns out that a lot of talent can be dug out of 2,000 hobos.
Coxey's army, 1 million strong, rolling down the dusty road, marching to DC for the fight, to lift the burdened heavy load. It's 1894, a dire year, the silver panic crushes hope. Factories closed and fields forgotten, crisis woven across the slope. We're calling out to broken hearts, to those lost in the fog. Let your voices blend with ours till we make our message heard.
And so, we walked. Over 160 miles from Council Bluffs to Des Moines. It was there, at the stoveworks, that the Army lay down and swore a mighty oath that its feet were sore and that it would walk no more. We took possession of the stoveworks and told the citizens that we had come to stay. That we'd walked in, but we'd be goddamned if we'd walk out. They were hospitable for a time, but this was too much of a good thing. And so we built boats. The good citizens of Iowa supplied us lumber, and all 2,000 busied themselves building rafts to float the so-called river, known as the Des Moines. This was not to be advised according to many locals. But we had little choice, and it busied the boys.
Long before he became a world-renowned writer, Jack London was a witness to history. This story recounts his journey with Kelly's Industrial Army, a forgotten mass movement of the unemployed seeking justice at the nation's doorstep. Through storms, hunger, and hardship, London's real-life tale captures the endurance of the human spirit and the raw truths of America in crisis. Jack London traveled with Kelly's army for about 6 weeks. They crossed Iowa and camped in many small towns. In Des Moines, they built rafts and floated 200 miles down the Des Moines River to the Mississippi. Jack split from Kelly's army at Keokuk, Iowa, and proceeded to ride the rails for several more months. About 600 of Kelly's marchers floated the Mississippi to the Ohio River and up that river to march into Washington on July 4th. Jacob Coxey and Carl Brown did march to the Capitol, leading over 10,000 supporters, while an estimated 30,000 watched the circus-like parade. When he approached the Capitol to give his speech, Jacob Coxey was arrested by Capitol Police for holding a rally without a permit, perhaps the most anticlimactic end of a mass movement in history. Coxey's army did show us all for the first time how effective a well-organized nationwide movement can become. And it brought the idea of government support for the unemployed and less fortunate, especially during mass economic upheaval, to the forefront. His ideas were not adopted during the Silver Panic, but FDR credited them as the inspiration for several of the public works programs that helped rescue the economy from the Great Depression many years later. And Jacob Coxey triumphantly returned and gave his speech on the steps of the Capitol on May Day, 1934. Coxey and Kelly's ragtag armies weren't just a protest. They were part of the spark that lit a fire under a nation. Through mud, snow, popular support, and hostility mixed with kindness, these men marched together not for glory but for work, for justice, and for each other. This isn't nostalgia. It's a reminder that real change begins with sore feet and shared purpose. Jack London began his transformation from a hungry young man to writer of the people here. The march didn't end in victory, but it helped launch the first nationwide protest movement and shaped one of America's greatest storytellers.